Hi, all. As we move into week 7, I want to remind you again that your grade in this course really should be whatever you want to make it. So if you're not happy with where your grade stands right now, make sure you check it in the grade book. Go to page 4 of the syllabus and look at that little paragraph titled Revisions. You are permitted to turn in a revision on any paper assignment that we have in this course up until the last day of our class together, the last night. The date is listed there, my expectations are listed there. I'm looking for some kind of a content change on your paper when you do a revision. So you're welcome to turn in revisions on all 7 of the papers up until that final 8th paper if you would like to. Take note too that writing assignment 7 is a draft for writing assignment 8. You get to turn in the same work 2 times. The goal is that we're bringing together all of the different concepts that we have discussed in our course, and you're going to demonstrate what you've learned in some kind of a piece that has hopefully some kind of meaning for you. I'm trying to leave the components of the assignment fairly open so that you can pick a project for home, a personal project, a project for work, whatever works for you. Craft it into what meets the requirements of the assignment. I will give you full feedback and then you'll turn it in again for writing assignment 8. So, couple things in that. Number 1, make sure you look up the revisions if you're wanting to improve your grade, because you can submit those at any time. And then pay attention to writing assignment 7 and then 8. You get another opportunity with writing assignment 8 to improve your grade. Writing assignment 7 should not be viewed as a draft in such that it's just a sloppy job. It should be viewed as a draft in that it is an opportunity to show me your best work, let me give you some comments on it, and then see if you can improve on it. That's the goal, trying to see how much you've learned of all these concepts that we're talking about so far this term. I've listed them there on the assignment, kind of what I'm looking for. So it should be clear to you. Let me know if you have any questions. And notice I've been asking for these appendices all the way through our course, and those have all been just kind of a training ground on what I want you thinking about as you approach any kind of writing. So that audience description that's been an appendix on almost every assignment in our course is something that I want you learning how to think about every time you sit down to write, whether it's an email for work or a text that you're sending to somebody. It just becomes a subconscious way that you think about your writing. Purpose, audience, and writer every time. For writing assignment 7 and 8, you do not need to complete an audience description, notice on the assignment, but I certainly want you thinking about it. And if I were to come back and ask you, I would want you to be able to articulate that, just like I want you to be able to for a peer who asks you about it, or another professor in another course, or a boss at work when you're writing some kind of a project. I want you to feel so confident that you already think through all of these details that anybody can question your writing, and you'll be able to articulate very intentionally why you put the comma where it is, or put your thesis where it is, or included the details that you did. Speaking of details, there's another concept that I want to talk through with you, and this is the idea of allowing particulars to stand for the greater meaning. Okay, that sounds really vague and complicated, so let me break it down for you. What I mean is, we tend to, when we want to say something, we tend to use a lot of superlatives. It's just what we do as Western Americans. So if I want you to believe me when I tell you that a restaurant is good, I might say, no, 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 really, it's really, really, really good. It is the best I've ever tasted. And I could go on and on in that light. And if you know me well, you might believe me. If you don't know me very well, you might stop listening after I use the first couple of superlatives and think, okay, she really likes that restaurant. It gets repetitive and it gets dull after a while. And this happens in the news. This happens at work. This happens at school. We do it all the time. We consume it all the time. People who are just saying very over and over and over rather than actually giving us evidence or details. So, what I want you to learn to do is to replace the superlatives or the generalities with a specific. And one way to think about it is a single moment. So, single moment evidence. The backdraw that we often have is that we have been taught from very early years kindergarten up through, I don't know, really high school for some of us, but certainly through 8th grade, we are taught that when you begin a paper, you start with the broad generality and explain your way into the specific, almost said Pacific, into the specific of your thesis, which can be effective depending on your topic. But I'm going to say at your level of writing, I want to see you get more quickly, if not immediately, into the specifics of your meaning. You do not need to start way back here at the beginning of time, at the encyclopedia definition. Just get right into what your meaning is, and then back up your thesis with very specific evidence so that your readers know exactly what you're talking about. This can go for a short story, this can go for, as I said before, a work email or a project. So a single moment evidence means that if I were to ask you what moment did that occur, you could say, whether it's fiction and you're making it up, you still have it in your head, or it's nonfiction, it's something that actually happened, you would be able to say July 26, 2007. That's when that happened, or roughly, the summer of 2007. And it was afternoon and the weather was hot. You see where I'm headed with this? A very specific moment that you then allow to stand for the general meaning that you're getting at. So an example might be if I tell you that I have a friend at church who is so generous. She is the most generous person I know. God gifted her with this kind heart. You would love her. She's so sweet. She's just super, super kind to everybody that she meets. Everybody loves her. I could keep going, and it's pretty vague, right? Like, yeah, you might think, yeah, she sounds like a really nice person, but am I somebody who exaggerates all the time and I always talk that way about people? You might not know me well enough and know whether or not that's the case. Or it just gets fatiguing after a while because we're always bombarded with all of this information where everyone is telling us that everything is the most of whatever it is. That seems to be a trend these days. So don't be that person. Instead, what if I were to not even tell you that she's the most generous person I know? Instead, I tell you, I have this friend. Her name is Jill. She goes to church with me. And do you know, when she had breast cancer, she is so thoughtful of other people that she, instead of focusing on her own chemotherapy appointments and her own nausea and the fact that her own hair was starting to come out, she spent a whole afternoon baking banana muffins with walnuts on top, and she put them into these little decorative boxes, and then she got a couple of her teenagers to help her, and they drove them around town to other people that she knew were either in a time of crisis or just kind of lonely and needed a pick-me-up. That's just the kind of person she is. Now, I told that maybe a little bit longer than I would suggest when you're doing this with regularity. When you're doing this with regularity, it's not that you're going to make everything you do longer. That gets tedious, and sometimes you're given a restriction where you simply can't get longer. What I want you to get in the habit of is going back through your work, isolating those places where you have a generality or a superlative, and replacing it with a single moment specific. And it could just be a single detail. It can be that single moment in time and an action that is happening. It can be a variety of things. But how can you replace the superlatives with the specific, the single moment evidence or single moment detail? Go back through your most recent work. Note where maybe I've made comments asking you for specifics or asking you to dig in a little more deeply. How could you replace with something more specific? It will feel, if this is new to you, a little bit against the grain because we feel like we are compelled to give the more general meaning. So I want to empower you to know that it's okay to allow the specific to stand for the bigger picture. If you have questions about this, let me know. I look forward to seeing what your writing assignment 7 is going to be and writing assignment 6 this week as well. Blessings on your week.